Amara stood by the lake's edge, her black hair drenched and clinging like smoldering charcoal under the rain, her eyes fixed on the little girl hiding behind the thin curtain of the wooden hut. 10 years had passed, but time had left no mark on her face, for she was no longer human. In her heart, an old wound still silently bled. What must be sacrificed to gain the love of a human? She had already paid the price with her radiant golden fins, her freedom, and now she was on the verge of losing her child. But that man, Zion, still refused to understand. He held on to Lumi as if she were the last remnant of his soul, ready to fight the entire ocean to keep her. "If you don't give her back, they will come, and this whole village will be swallowed," Amara whispered in the rain, but Zion only gripped his spear tighter. Tonight the moon was full, and the surface of the water had begun to boil. Once upon a time, when the moonlight still illuminated the weathered wooden roofs by the Louisiana swamp, there lived a young man named Zion with his mother in a small, makeshift hut built on damp ground. Every morning, he went out to the swamp early, clutching the fishing net his father had left behind, the wind slipping through his shirt, the smell of salt water clinging to his skin like a call from the depths of the past. His life was a peaceful repetition, catching shrimp, gathering medicinal herbs for his mother, and every evening, listening to the distant sound of drums echoing like an ancient lullaby. Until that fateful day, when Zion pulled his net from the water, he saw a soft figure entangled in the fishing cords. It was a woman, her skin shimmering darkly like velvet, her black hair flowing down to her waist, and her eyes, those eyes seemed to reflect the entire universe. She was unconscious, but not cold. As he leaned closer, her breath carried the scent of seaweed and something utterly foreign. Zion brought her back. The villagers looked at him with wary eyes. She awoke after 3 days and 3 nights, and when she first spoke her name, Amara, her voice rang out like a song from the river's depths. No one knew where she came from, nor had anyone ever seen her before. But from that day, the skies were no longer calm. Amara was unlike anyone else. She never let water touch her skin, always avoiding raindrops, hiding her hands whenever the villagers washed their faces at the well. Once, Zion saw her touch a bowl of water, and her hand emitted a faint steam, as if her flesh was unaccustomed to the human world. Every full moon, she vanished without a trace, without explanation. When she returned, her eyes were red, as if she had been crying for hours. Yet he loved her still, with a pure, unconditional, unquestioning love. Whenever she sat by the porch of the hut, singing nameless songs, Zion seemed to forget everything else in the world. They married in a simple ceremony, with djembe drums resounding by the fire amidst the skeptical gazes of the villagers. And then the whispers began to spread. The village elders said her skin glowed under the moonlight. The children claimed they had seen her talking to fish by the lake. An old woman muttered, "That woman, she's not of mortal kind." But Zion paid no heed. All he knew was that, since Amara's arrival, his heart was no longer empty. But perhaps some things that come too beautifully come with a price. And if love is blind, would Zion soon realize he was holding something that did not belong to this world? On a quiet night, when the moon was still and the wind had ceased, Amara went into labor. Without a cry, without a call, she only gripped Zion's hand tightly, letting sweat mingle with tears that no one could tell were from pain or from fear. When the first piercing cry broke out in the small hut, Zion felt his heart tighten, not from joy, but from the gaze of the newborn child looking at him. A brilliant silver hue, cold as moonlight on the lake's surface. They named her Lumi, light amidst the darkness. The girl grew up with shimmering golden hair as if woven from the glow of dusk, but her skin was pale, as if never touched by warm blood. From infancy, Lumi never cried. Only on full moon nights, when everyone else was fast asleep, would she hum a strange melody, melodious like waves lapping against stone. The villagers avoided the child. Mothers carried their own children away from Lumi's gaze. A few innocent children asked Zion why Lumi was unlike anyone else. Zion only smiled, but at night, he couldn't sleep. He recalled the stories his mother used to tell about half-souled children, born from the love between a human and a sea creature, carrying within them two worlds that could never reconcile. Those children were never whole. They were always called back. Zion began to notice. Lumi often stood by the lake for long stretches, motionless, as if listening to something ordinary people couldn't hear. She didn't like eating salt, never drank the well water her mother prepared. Once, Zion saw her reach her hand into the lake, and an entire school of small fish swam to her, circling her hand as if summoned by an invisible signal. He said nothing to Amara. But that night, as he watched his wife stand under the moonlight, holding Lumi in her arms and softly singing a song in a strange language, Zion felt his heart sink as if a cord had snapped. He no longer knew what lived in his home love, or a curse. And if both existed together, was he strong enough to hold on to it? Because some children are born not to stay, but to awaken something slumbering in the darkness. All right, my dear audience, are you ready for a story of love, betrayal, and a cursed mermaid? Brace yourselves, because what you're about to hear will leave you breathless. Don't forget to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and comment with the number 1 if you find the story intriguing, so we know you're still here. Let me know where you're watching from and what time it is now. No one in the village could recall exactly when that night began, only that the rain came as if the entire ocean was pouring onto the swamp. Thunder roared like the beat of funeral drums, and the water rose so swiftly that it swept away Zion's wooden fence in the blink of an eye. The wind howled through the bending eucalyptus trees, leaves falling like a shower of needles, and the sky was pitch black, as if even the moon had fled in fear. In the small hut, Zion frantically searched for Lumi, but found only the door flung open, gaping like an astonished mouth. Amara was gone too. Hastily imprinted footprints led to the lake's edge, then vanished into the muddy, turbulent water. Zion rushed out into the rain, shouting until his voice grew hoarse, his eyes scanning the icy surface, but all he saw were lifeless ripples. He ran along the lakeshore, stumbling repeatedly, hands caked with mud, yet he refused to give up. In his desperate groping, his eyes caught a faint golden glimmer tangled in the low branches of a tree. It was a scale. A familiar scale that once shimmered under the moonlight on Amara's skin. Zion's trembling hand picked it up. The scale was still warm. Right below, etched in the waterlogged mud, was a scrawled message written in a thick, dark red liquid that reeked of something fishy, not human blood, but something else. Viscous and black, smelling like dead fish. The words stood out clearly under the distant flash of lightning. If you want your child to live, let her return to where she belongs. Zion's heart seemed to stop. He collapsed, clutching the words as if he could hold on to something through them. Every doubt, every fear, every old warning now became painfully real. His child was no longer in this world, and the woman he loved, perhaps, had never truly belonged to it. The rain still hadn't stopped, The entire village stayed awake through the night, haunted by the wind's wail, like a lament rising from the river's depths. But Zion alone was the one who had lost everything. He returned to the cold, empty hut, his eyes hollow as a gutted shell. 3 days later, the villagers saw him erect a small wooden plaque where the golden scale had been caught in the tree. On it was a simple carving, "When the moon shines again, I will bring my child home." From then on, every moonlit night, Zion sat motionless by the lake, clutching Lumi's old comb, his unblinking eyes fixed on the still water, as if waiting for a dream to be returned. Even if just for a moment, there are those who wait in despair and then forget. But there are also those, like Zion, who wait until the pain becomes blood flowing in their heart, silent, steadfast, and never running dry. He took no further steps, never left the village, never moved from the chair by the lake where, every moonlit night, he left an empty space beside him, like a silent invitation for something that could never be. The villagers gradually stopped asking. They avoided Zion's gaze, as if that look could resurrect something they feared. But on every moonlit night, from afar, people still saw the flickering light at the lake's edge and the silhouette of a man sitting motionless, his hand tightly clutching a broken comb and a strand of golden hair. Then one day, she returned. Not a sound, no footsteps, no ripples. Amara rose from the lake's surface as if the water itself were her flesh, silent and majestic. She looked no different from the day Zion first found her. Skin smooth as velvet, sleek black hair cascading down her back, and those eyes that still seemed to draw the entire universe into their depths. But now, under the moonlight, something was different. Around her neck was a string of black pearls, dark, deep, like the bottomless abyss. And beneath her thin, drenched gown, golden scales glimmered brilliantly. No longer hidden, no longer shy. It was like a confession that needed no words. I was never a mortal. Zion didn't rush to her. He only stood watching, his arms hanging limply, as if moving too quickly would make it all vanish. No tears, no embrace, only the air, thick with things never spoken. Amara didn't explain why she had disappeared. She didn't say where she had been. No justifications, no apologies. She only looked at Zion, and her voice rang out like waves crashing against a cliff. Our child is about to be called back. I no longer have the right to keep her. Zion collapsed to the ground. That brief sentence stripped away every hope he had ever nurtured. So, her return was not for a reunion. It was to deliver news of an impending loss. Amara looked up at the sky. The moon was growing fuller, larger, brighter. The wind shifted. The owls began their nightly calls early. She didn't need to say more. Her gaze was enough. For Zion understood. The creatures of the deep sea never keep their children for long. When the time comes, the hybrid soul will be called back, dissolving into foam, becoming a song or an eternal silence. But how could a father accept such a thing? Zion grasped Amara's hand, the first time in years. Her hand was cold, yet familiar. He wanted to hold her back, as he had held onto his vow, his memories, his Lumi, but everything slipped through his fingers like waves. She whispered, I traded everything to keep our child with me, but now, even Mother Sea no longer forgives. And then she was gone. No sound of water, no flash of light, only the string of black pearls remained, falling and shattering into dust. That night, Zion sat by the lake until dawn. His eyes held no more tears, but his heart was heavy as stone. He knew he didn't have much time left. And perhaps there was only one way to keep Lumi with him to confront whatever was calling her back. But could a father, with his love and pain, triumph over an entire world beneath the depths? Some truths, no matter how deeply buried, will eventually rise like a corpse adrift in the current. And that night, when the moon reached its full cycle for the 118th time, Amara appeared again by the lake's edge, where the silver light bathed both the water and memories in white. Zion was already seated, as he was every moonlit night. But this time, he wasn't just waiting. He wanted answers at any cost. No more tears, no more blind waiting. Only a man who had lost everything, and one question that demanded an answer: why? Amara sat beside him, the first time in 10 years. No greeting, no gesture, but the wind seemed to still, and the lake's surface ceased to ripple. She gazed far off, where the horizon met the water's depths, then spoke her voice low and resonant, as if each word was distilled from regret. She had once been one of the princesses of the deep-sea kingdom of Roanyal, a realm untouched by light, where creatures lived by song rather than words. In that world, she was a source of pride, her tail of golden scales gleaming like the last rays of a sunset, her voice capable of lulling sharks to sleep and halting the currents. But then she fell in love with a human. And down there, loving a mortal was an unforgivable sin. She was condemned for betrayal, banished from the ocean. To walk on land, she had to pay a price. She traded her precious tail for 2 painful legs each step, like treading on shards of glass. She bore a curse carved into law by her own mother, the Queen of the Deep. If you bear a child with a mortal, that child will not belong to the land. On the 120th full moon from its birth, it will be called back, a blood sacrifice to open the gate for Mother Sea and cleanse all disgrace. Zion went still. In the darkness, his eyes seemed to turn to stone. Lumi, that little girl, was a living sacrifice. Amara nodded. No need for Zion to speak. She had known this day would come. She had fled, hidden, begged countless powers, but no one could defy the law of the sea. That was why she vanished. Not to escape, but to delay the inevitable. But now, with the moon having risen for the 118th time, time was measured only in breaths. Lumi was now 10 years old. On moonlit nights, the girl's humming had begun to change. No longer meaningless melodies. They were ancient songs, the language of the sea. Though she didn't know it, in every note, the sea recognized its blood, and they were coming. Zion clenched his fists. He thought of the days holding Lumi when she was feverish, the times he brushed her golden hair in the porch's light, the nights telling her myths and pretending to sleep when she giggled. Now, all of it could be swept back to the ocean, dissolved into foam, and lost forever. He looked at Amara. She didn't cry, but her shoulders trembled faintly. She was a mermaid, but now only a mother about to lose her child. Zion stood. He could not let a curse decide Lumi's fate. If he had to face the deep sea itself, he would. The 120th full moon night, the light from the high heavens like a silver sword slicing through the veil of darkness, pouring down onto the still lake like a sacred call from another realm. The water's surface suddenly tensed, not from the wind, but from the invisible presence of something ancient awakening. Zion did not sleep. He stood there before the wooden hut's threshold, where every evening he used to tell stories to Lumi. But this time, it was no longer fairy tales to soothe fears, but a silent preparation for an unavoidable storm. In his hand was the ancestral spear, the spear once stained with the blood of night wolves and lurking dark arts in the ancient forest. An antiquated weapon, but on that night, it seemed to come alive howling for its final mission. Lumi lay under the blanket, but her small body emitted a faint glow like streaks of sea algae in the deep night. Her eyes half closed, her lips murmuring unfamiliar melodies, songs that belonged to no human language. Those sounds seemed drawn from the abyss, piercing through the earth, stirring all things. Then the lake trembled. From its center, strange waves rippled outward. Mud surged, trees rustled, and from the shadows, a colossal figure began to emerge, gradually taking the shape of what generations had only dared whisper about: the deep water leader. The creature did not walk, did not fly, but rose as if the lake itself was lifting him. Its body long like an ancient serpent, scales covered in moss and sea cucumbers, head crowned with a decayed shell tiara, eyes sunken like two whirlpools. Following behind was a silent army, hundreds of slimy-skinned beings, fish-bodied with human heads, quietly lining up like a predestined ritual from eons past. They uttered no words, but Zion heard their message clearly in his mind like stones clashing against stones, heavy and undeniable. The childbearing royal blood had reached her time, and they had come to welcome the heir back to Mother Sea. Zion did not retreat. The light from the spear flickered, a mix of green and gold, like a torch lit amid a sandstorm. He knew he could not kill the leader, nor defeat that army, but perhaps he only needed to last long enough, just a moment to slow it down, to hold on. The colossal creature advanced. With each step, the water rose a little. Muddy sludge engulfed Zion's feet, but he stood firm. Winds whipped, the moon burned red, but the spear in his hand did not lower. His gaze was like a fortress carved between his daughter and fated death. Lumi's song echoed louder. The melody transformed, both familiar and distant. In her dreamlike slumber, she began to turn, her hands reaching toward the lake. The light from her body blazed brightly, causing the sea creatures to halt. The leader raised his staff, no lightning, no thunder, but the ground before Zion cracked open, steam rising like the gates of hell unlocking. But he did not withdraw. No curse could make him step back from his daughter. In the silence, only Zion's heart pounded fiercely. He thought not of himself, not of victory or defeat, only of the moment when Lumi first called him father, when she touched his cheek and smiled without reason. If this was the last time he would see that smile, then at least he wanted it to be chosen, not forced, not stolen. The moon changed color. A halo of red like blood seeped into the silver white. That light shone directly down on Lumi. She sat up abruptly, eyes wide open. All the sea creatures froze. Time seemed to hold its breath, and the only question remaining was, would Lumi step out from her father's shadow or run toward the place she had never known to call home? There are moments when, even if time stands still, fate marches on. And that night, at the hazy boundary between two worlds where the blood-red moonlight shone, Lumi stood, fragile and radiant, like a dividing line between life and death. From behind, the army of the deep remained motionless, their eyes ensnaring the little girl. In front of her, Zion, his body drenched in sweat and mud, stood like the final pillar, the ancestral spear heavy in his hand. He knew this was no longer a battle he could win with strength. It was a battle that demanded absolute courage of the heart. Lumi slowly stepped out from under the eaves, her bare feet touching the ground as if walking on the very bodies of her parents. The light from her blended with the moonlight, forming a fragile halo so delicate that a stronger gust might make one think it would vanish. But no, it was a living light, the light of choice. She looked at her father. In her eyes, there was no fear, only a silent question. Am I allowed to choose? Zion nodded. No words needed. And in that moment, everything shattered. The sea leader charged forward like a whirlwind. The army behind him roared silently, the half-human, half-fish creatures surging past the water's edge like a screaming tide. Zion lunged toward Lumi without a moment's hesitation. He embraced her, her small body trembling in his arms. The wind lashed at his back, the claws of the sea tearing into his flesh, but he held her tightly, as if to envelop the entire world in his embrace. In that final moment, he whispered in her ear, not with words, but with the beating of his heart, "You are not a sacrifice. You are my last light." And then a radiant blue-green light flared from his chest. Not blinding, not fierce, but the light of something long dormant, the light of unconditional love. That light enveloped both father and daughter, spiraling upward like a vortex of glass, driving back the sea creatures, slowing space and time itself. The army halted. The leader stepped back. Their roars turned to broken sobs in the night. When the sun rose, the mist slowly cleared over the lake, and Zion was nowhere to be seen. Only a stone statue remained. It depicted a man kneeling, cradling a child in his arms. His face was serene, his gaze fixed toward the dawning horizon. They say no one dared touch that statue, for every breeze that passed carried the faint scent of salt, not from the sea, but from tears. Amara returned when the sky had turned a pale blue. She emerged from the water as if she had never left. Her eyes were hollow, like those of someone who had left her soul elsewhere. When she saw the statue, she did not cry. She did not scream. She only knelt silently, her trembling hand touching the cold stone. Then, from deep within her throat, she sang a song. An ancient song passed down only to the princesses of the sea. The song had no words. It was only the voice of the heart, the sound of longing, regret, and a love that could not save. Tears rolled from her eyes, touching the stone, instantly turning into black pearls, drop after drop, like an endless stream of sorrow. These were the first tears she shed not for the ocean, but for a man, the man who dared to face an entire world to keep his daughter. When the song ended, the wind stopped blowing. She did not look back. She left no words. She only walked silently into the lake, letting the water swallow her body, bit by bit, as if even the ocean feared the pain she carried. When time has passed through pain, what remains is not just memory, but legacy. Lumi the child, once destined to be a sacrifice, now stepped beyond the boundary of fate, with a heart carrying both bloodlines, human and sea. No one dared mention the curse after that night, for the curse had been broken, not by weapons, but by love. Lumi lived, growing up under the care of the fishing village's souls, in the compassionate gazes and silent protection of those who had witnessed the miracle under the moon. She did not merely live, she grew up like a beam of light. Her golden hair, shimmering like waves, lengthened with the years, and her silver eyes always reflected the hearts of others. Each step she took whispered, "We are not born to belong to one world." At 18, Lumi did not leave the village. She did not seek Mother Sea, nor did she try to hide from her roots. Instead, she opened her heart to other children, those with scales beneath their skin, voices that stirred animals, or skin that changed color with the moon. Children the world called hybrids of the water. Lumi did not call them different. She called them the future. She led them to the lake where the stone statue still stood, like an immortal light. And around that statue, Lumi built a small village, which grew into a community. That community became a kingdom not needing a throne, only faith and a name. Aqualira, the intersection of light and water. There, humans and the sea lived side by side. The children learned to use their powers to heal, to nurture, not to fight. The village elders recounted Zion's story as one might speak of a god not for his strength, but for his silent sacrifice. Lumi never claimed to be a queen, but in the eyes of the children, she was a lighthouse. And whenever someone asked about her father, Lumi would only fall silent, then point toward the lake where sunlight glinted on the stone statue. People came from far and wide to hear the story, not to understand sea creatures, but to believe that love in its simplest form could alter fate. The black pearls that had fallen around the statue were now kept in small vials, hung before every home as protective charms. They were not just Amara's tears, they were witnesses to the union of two once hostile worlds. Each year, on the full moon of late summer, Lumi sang the song her mother once hummed. It had no words, but everyone understood. It was the echo of a heart that transcended the deep sea and reached the high heavens. And though time passed, the statue remained unchanged. Zion still held his daughter in his stone embrace, but from the gaze carved into that stone, people felt one thing. Life never dies if it is held by love. Perhaps within each of us, we are all searching for our own Aqualira, a place where love is not divided by any boundary. Some believe that the end of a story is when the door closes. But in the place where the light from Zion's statue still casts its reflection on the lake, new doors are opening silently and full of mystery. For every autumn full moon, people see a faint glow around the statue of Zion. Some say his spirit still guards Aqualira. Others claim it is a warning that the darkness has not truly retreated. And Lumi remains ever silent. But sometimes, when a strange child appears by the lake's edge with deep black eyes and silver scales on their hands, she only gives a faint smile as if she had been waiting for them all along. Perhaps the second part of the story does not lie in the hands of gods, but in the hearts of those who dare to love unconditionally. From this story, we learn that love does not only heal wounds, it can also break invisible chains, freeing entire worlds from prejudices carved into blood. If you've ever felt lost, like you belong nowhere, remember that there is an Aqualira within you. And in that place, you don't need to choose one world to exist. Please leave a comment to let me know, what do you feel about Lumi, about Zion, and are you looking forward to the next part? Don't forget to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and share this story with someone you believe needs to hear it today. Because who knows, you might just be the one to write the next chapter of the Aqualira legend.